Who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven? That is the question that I will attempt to answer today. So, this question is a question that is very interesting, right? Who is the greatest in heaven? Who is the greatest? And the disciples of Christ actually asked Jesus this question, right? And Jesus responds with, he who wishes to be the greatest must be the least of all and must be servant of all. Now, I just want to make a very short video and talk about this. I just want to talk about Christian leadership. What does it mean? And there's also a book about Christian leadership. It's written by Ellen White. You can go and read it for yourself if you like, right? But I'm just going to talk about something very short, which is actually in the book. It talks about servant leadership, right? So basically, if you look at the life of Christ and how he lived his life, throughout his life, he was a humble person. In fact, if you read the book of Philippians, chapter 2, verse 6, it says, Jesus Christ, who being in the form of God, thought it not robbery to be equal with God, but made himself of no reputation, and took upon himself the form of a servant or of a man. So, Jesus, who is the Son of God, or if I could say God Himself, right, decides to humble Himself to become a man, and not just a man, a human being, right? But where he was born at I think it was a stall or something, an animal stall, right? And then even his job, he was a carpenter, and then he was friends with sinners, right? And he died an embarrassing death, right? Like you would expect more from the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. And that's exactly what happened at the time of Jesus, right? When they heard that the Messiah was coming, they expected someone who was going to be king over Israel, not someone who was going to die and be humiliated on the cross, right? But because they misunderstood the mission of Jesus Christ, they thought that he was going to come and be king of the Jews here on earth. But that was not the mission of Christ, right? But he will come back the second time and will be king with the kingdom that is everlasting, right? So if we look at the life of Christ, he lived a very, very humble life, right? Um, there is an instant before Jesus was crucified on the cross, right? It was the Passover feast, the feast of unleavened bread, right? So before they eat, it was the Jews' custom that they must wash each other's feet, right? And normally the servant would do that. So as Jesus was in the upper room with his disciples, I think it was in the upper room with his disciples, right? They are looking to one another. And in their mind they are thinking and saying, who's gonna wash the feet, right? And they're busy judging one another and saying, no, me, I can't wash Peter's feet, or I can't wash John's feet, right? It should be them. Or like, I'm favored by Jesus, right? So I can't be the one. Like, why would I humble myself, right? That's what was going on in their minds. That like, who is the greatest? Like, I am the greatest. I'm next to Jesus, therefore I should not wash the feet. And then as they were disputing in their minds, we see the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, right? The one who has authority on heaven and on earth, right? He takes the towel, he takes the wash basin, if I could say. He pours in water and then starts washing the feet of the disciples. He took off his cloak and says, now I'm not gonna act as king, but I'm gonna act as a servant. And he showed humility to his disciples. Being the King of Kings, being the Lord of Lords, Jesus Christ was able to humble himself and not just say that the greatest in the kingdom is he who becomes a servant, but actually he actually practiced that and showed us a living example of that. Even as leaders, maybe in the church, maybe as leaders in our societies, maybe as leaders at work, at school, wherever. Because some of us at school, maybe you can be prefects or maybe class representatives, right? But wherever you are leading, you should lead with the thought of servant leadership, that you are not the boss, but you are guiding them to the right path, that you are willing to work for the other person, that you are willing to serve the other person, not the other person serving you. That is servant leadership. And I believe that we should practice it.